Hey guys, it's Josh, and welcome back to the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad, your favorite podcast for learning how to balance between being a functional adult and a raging dumpster fire. Let's be honest, we've all been a little bit of a dumpster fire. Joining me today inside the Bachelor Pad is Douglas Plowman. So, today, guys, we actually have a pretty solid episode here for you. And this isn't just for my bachelors, this is for the bachelorettes listening, because I think this is a topic that everybody can relate to. If you're anything like me and like Doug, you're going to use what we talk about and push you forward. So, Doug, before we get into today's episode, can you tell me a little bit about you, your business, how you got here today?
Yeah, sure. So my business is Elevate Professional Solutions. It's a consulting company, and I work primarily with businesses to help them find and implement different types of technology solutions. I haven't always done this. I've actually only been doing this since March was when I opened up the doors to my business. So pretty new in the entrepreneurial world, but I've worked in operations and IT for a long time. And so kind of how I got started with that was in college. I went to University of Florida and I got a degree in industrial and systems engineering. A lot of people, most of my classmates that graduated with that degree ended up going into consulting, big consulting firms like Deloitte, KPMG. And that was something that I was always very interested in. I always wanted to be a consultant. Around that time, it was probably like 75 to 80% travel. Post COVID, we know things are a lot different. Most consulting firms are doing things virtually, but around that time, it required a lot of travel. And I had been in a longer term relationship with a girl that I'd met while I was there in college. And we'd been together for a couple years. And our goal was post graduation to kind of get out and move in together with one another. And so, that being said, it was something that was going to be difficult for us to be moving to a new city, to a new location, and for me to be traveling 4 out of the 5 days a week. So, that was kind of a career path that I always wanted to pursue. But because of the situation that I was in my relationship, I decided to go elsewhere. And so I ended up going to work for a tech company called Citrix Systems. And with them, I worked as an analyst. And so I kind of went like the data analyst route as opposed to becoming a consultant right away. But that was something that was always in the back of my mind and something that I always was eager to do. And I really tried to morph all of the roles that I had at different organizations into a consultant positions.
That's one thing that I can relate to is when you have a passion for something, but the opportunity doesn't always fall in your lap.
Mhm.
Sometimes you just got to jimmy it to be a
Yeah,
thing.
without a doubt, man. You may not always have the right path. You may not know the exact path to where it is that you're going, but you have somewhat of a vision that's directionally accurate. And as long as you're heading in the right direction and building the different skills and things that you need to move forward towards that direction, then you oftentimes end up going in the right place. If you're ultimately destined to be a consultant and you're spending all your time making art, those things aren't necessarily in the same direction. I'm sure that you probably could morph it, but that's kind of what I like to tell people when I talk to them is you're probably not going to know exactly what you're destined to do, but if you have a direction that you can follow and kind of just put one step in front of the other, you're going to progress towards that, and eventually it'll become more clear for you.
There are a lot of times where I feel like, especially in this generation that we're in right now, this young professional age range is we're in semi uncharted territories. Like we all have wandered off the beaten path. There's still some like pathway there, but
Mm-hmm.
we just kind of pack away to really like go and do what we want to do.
Without a doubt.
A lot of us aren't in traditional roles anymore. Like a 9 to 5 is just not the grind any of us really adhere or subscribe to. And I find that a lot of, at least like in the millennial, the early Gen Zs, there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit out there. And so, like I said, people are just trying to create their own thing. And it's not as easy as people make it out to be, whether it's learning how to leverage your past experience into starting your own business or finding into a new role that you really just wanted to try that you never thought you qualified for.
Yeah, 100%, man, 100%. I think one thing that's interesting that I've really started to double down on since I became an entrepreneur and started this journey for myself is the way that I like to think about it is you have what you love to do and what you're good at. And some people have a hard time finding either one of those, but really the intersection between the two is where your zone of genius is. When you can find what it is that you love to do and also what you're good at and merge those two, then you're really moving towards a path towards success, right? So I think that one of the beauties of being an entrepreneur is oftentimes you may work in a job that you love, but you're probably only doing that thing that's within your zone of genius, maybe like 25% of the time throughout the course of your day. The other 75% of the time, you're doing admin stuff, you're doing things that you hate, and it's just, you're not completely fulfilled, you know? But being an entrepreneur, you have the ability to identify what that zone of genius is and build your entire business around it to ensure that you're spending all of your time doing the thing that you're good at and that you love, you know, and then you can outsource the rest. So the remainder of the things, find an expert in that field to do it for you, and you're golden. And I think that's how a lot of people, in my experience that I've talked to, have become successful, is because they've found their zone of genius and they stay in that.
Learning how to turn your passion into profit.
Mm-hmm.
You said, I was like, a lot of us are passionate about, like you said, a lot of things, but finding that zone of genius where you can take the thing you're good at, that you enjoy doing, not only monetize it, but get to a point where you can start to delegate those yucky responsibilities that you're just not into.
Mm-hmm.
Because like one thing that I didn't think that I'd have to do when I started my business is finance. Like I'm not good with money.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like dealing with it. I don't like making contracts, but that's a really big part of it. I was like, I'm the content guy. I was like, I love ideas and making the ideas like happen. Everything else I've given away now. But I don't know if it's the same for you as it was for me. But you kind of mentioned it earlier, so I'm going to loop back into it. You said that a lot of your classmates kind of went a different route, but
Mm-hmm.
you were in this committed relationship, and that kind of, you know, guided your choice on what you did post-grad. I got to ask, are we still in that relationship?
We are not. We're not in that relationship.
Okay. So, I mean, I hate dealing with what ifs, but I'm going to ask you what if anyway. Do you think if you knew that this probably wasn't going to be my forever person, that you would have went a different way with your career earlier on?
Had I not been in that relationship, I most certainly would have went a different way with my career. However, all that being said, and it took me a while to land on this feeling that I have now based on, you know, how the relationship ended and things like that, but I wouldn't have traded the way that things went for anything. You know, I think the entire experience and being in that relationship and what I learned through it, I will forever be eternally grateful for. And the experience that I got doing what I did at the corporations that I worked at made me a 10 times better consultant than I would have been had I just gone to the big four or something like that. So life has a really funny way of working out and giving you exactly what it is that you need. And I think it's really a matter of the perspective that you have when you get hit with adversity that defines how you end up on the other side.
Life is the best teacher that we could ever have.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't get me wrong. It may not always teach you the practical applications of whatever you're interested in or whatever you do, but it does find a way to tie in those lessons that it needs to teach you and shows you a way into the next journey. But definitely where I started from before I went to university, my time at university and post, not a straight line.
It really is.
And you're right. I don't think I would ever change that for the world, because I met some great people. I built this team. I actually affirmed what I wanted to do. Because sometimes we have these little inklings of, oh, this would be cool to do, or
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to do this, but it's still a vague picture in your mind. I don't think, like, if I hadn't worked where I worked with who I worked with, I wouldn't have painted this vivid picture of podcasting. Hey, I can be honest when I say this. I didn't even know podcasting was a thing until 2020. I kid you not. Because I was like, well, everybody's stuck in the house. There's no new TV being made. I was like, what are we doing? And I was like, podcast. I was like, okay. And I started through this rabbit hole, and I was like, dude, I could definitely do this. And so 6-7 months later,
talk to cool people for a couple hours. That sounds like a good gig to me.
Realistically, when I first started this, I was like, it's just going to be me and my friends. I was like, nobody's going to listen to this. It's literally just going to be me and my neighbors, just random conversations. But guys, I've said this so much this season and past seasons. I'm so thankful for you guys for listening, tuning in, because now I really am connecting with some crazy people, not just in the US. Somehow Australia rocks with us hard.
Mm-hmm.
The UK is rocking with us. I never thought I'd be hitting people up from Australia on a weekly basis.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the life I live now.
It's wild, man. It's wild.
It really is. Relationships are the cornerstone to life. Let's be
Hmm.
honest.
Yeah.
Whether it's the relationships you form with people at work, how you interact with your family, romantic relationships, all those are super key and relevant into making us who we are. And like I said, forming how we interact, how we think about everything.
Mhm.
So without going into too much detail about that past breakup, how do you think that really motivated you into becoming the entrepreneur you are today?
That's a great question. And I think that what was most empowering about it was a 10-year relationship, and we were engaged when it ended, 5 months out from our wedding. And
Wow.
we had, I say that I'm very grateful for it because the majority of our relationship was amazing, and we were truly in love. There was the type of relationship where people looked at us and were like, listen, if you guys don't make it, there's no hope for love. So we were happy for the vast majority of the relationship. I would say maybe like looking back and doing some reflection, the year leading up to it was maybe not as perfect as the rest of it had been, but there's ebbs and flows in all types of relationships, especially when you've been in there for a really long time. But I think that when you are with somebody for a long time, you kind of synergize, you know what I mean? Especially if you spend a lot of time with one another and they become such a big part of your life that you may begin to sort of lose a little bit of like who you are, lose a little bit of your identity, whether you realize it or not. You kind of get very engulfed into the relationship. And I think that part of why we didn't end up working out was because I had really lost who I was. She's a doctor, so she was in med school for the majority of our relationship. And I spent a lot of my time just trying to support her and make sure that she was taken care of and that she had what she needed to get through that very stressful time and put my career that I wanted on hold. I was very successful in what I did. I was still advancing my career, just not necessarily in the way that I wanted to. I was progressing along, but not on the path that I wanted to pursue because I felt like I was kind of location locked in. We didn't know where we were going to end up in terms of where she may get into residency or this or that. So for me, I had really put my life and my aspirations and goals on hold. And it wasn't that she had asked me to do that. It was something that I just did, you know? That entire 10-year relationship ended pretty tragically in a matter of 7 days. I had the rug just pulled out completely from underneath me, and we were engaged. We were set to be married in a few months, you know. So it was a very difficult situation for me to go through, and I didn't really get any explanation or any closure or anything like that. A lot of that I had to ultimately find for myself. And so when you have somebody who's such a big part of your life like that, it leaves this huge void, and you spend 10 years really just fantasizing, for lack of a better word, and dreaming about this life that was going to be for it to all just go away. You know what I mean? And so for there, I was just kind of left like, shit, like, what do I do? You know? And I think that through a lot of self reflection, through a lot of just, kind of thinking and trying to figure out what was best for me, and then just getting back to my roots. Like there was all of these things that I wanted to do, all these aspirations that I had. What do I like? Who's Doug? I know who I was as part of this relationship, but now that this is no longer here and this is something that's not going to be there, what do I do? And I think that path of self discovery that I went on following that was one of the most significant periods of growth that I've ever experienced in my entire life. Like that 6 months, physically, mentally, emotionally, were like built a resiliency in myself that nothing will ever, nothing will ever stack up against. And I think that a lot of people can relate in different types of scenarios. I was actually just talking to my grandmother not too long ago. My grandfather just passed away about 5 months ago, and they were together, God, 40, 50 years. And it's something that was really difficult for her. And so, even though her situation was a bit different, it was still that kind of sense where you had somebody that you were with that took up so much of like this place in your life. And then all of a sudden they were gone, and you have this void that you need to fill. And I think in those circumstances, like you can take it one of two ways. Like your mindset will dictate how you come out on the other end and how long it takes for you to heal. So in my case, I really tried to say, I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to get in the gym. I'm going to do my thing and I'm going to be better for this, you know? And I think a lot of people in circumstances will look to blame the other person and just pass off blame and be like, it was this person's fault. Like, I don't know why they would have done this, blah, blah, blah. But for me, I took it as an opportunity to learn something. Like, what can I take from this experience and learn from it so that I'm better later? And it doesn't necessarily mean that I was at fault for anything, but how could I be a better person as a result of what happened? And so that's something that I try and take to every misstep or every failure that I have, whether it be personally or entrepreneurially. No matter what it is, it's a learning experience. It's an opportunity for me to grow and to be better. And I invite challenges now. I invite failure because I know that I'm going to come out on the other side better for it. And it was just one of the most impactful things that could have happened to me. And all of the anger and frustration and sadness that I had just ended up being fuel to the flame to build me up in such a way that I didn't really think I was capable of.
I mean, there was a lot there, and I resonated with a bit of it. First, obviously, losing anybody sucks, whether it's on a temporary or permanent basis. So, obviously, condolences to your loss of your grandfather. But losing relationships, those are tough, whether they're romantic or platonic, especially when they're such a large part of your life. Like 10 years, it's a nice chunk of change. That's like what, almost like a third of your life, you know? So, I mean, not only do you have to navigate your life going from 60 to 0 real quick, it's the inverse of 0 to 60, because everything just kind of fell apart around you. But you had to think, okay, what is my next step going to be? Not only that, who am I going to present to the world? Because single Doug and Doug who was engaged, two different people. I don't even have to ask that. I know it's fact. But if you guys remember a few episodes back, Nina Jarnum, she said something and I never thought about it, but it really got my wheels turning. She had been in a marriage for 15 plus years. And then when she got divorced, she was like, I forgot how old I was. She was like, I instantly reverted back to like that 20 something I was when I first got married. So when I was dating single, I reverted right back to that age, even though so much else had changed around me. People tell you to act your age, but I've never been this age before. How are you supposed to, I was like, these are things that sound dumb, but they're actually really deep if you think about it. Because you're not practicing how to flirt, how to like market yourself, put yourself out there, take risks when you're in that relationship, because you're like, I'm committed, I'm focused, I'm here, I'm loyal to my partner, my company, whatever. But then when that relationship ends, you're like, crap, I've been in this thing for so long. What do I do?
Yeah.
Do I just, and I was like, life happens so fast, things change all the time. So you can't really go back to the time before that and think you're still going to be the same level of successful. Because let's be honest, I was like, when you're 19, 20, 21, people give you a lot of passes on shit.
Yeah, without
But then once you get older and you're really out there, you're like, ooh, you graduated how long ago? And you haven't really done anything in the workspace, or like you said, you've been single for how long? Certain things people start to really judge you on. So you're like, all right, well, you have to find a way to be confident and like I said, remarket yourself to get anywhere.
Without a doubt, man. It's funny that you bring that up because I remember this was probably like a few weeks after becoming single. I was kind of just on a really casual date with a girl that lived in my apartment complex. I'd like met her at the pool or something like that. And we ended up just, kind of going back to my place. So we were like kind of hanging out, having a drink on the balcony. And she asked me, what's the most awkward date experience you've ever had? Or like, what's the most awkward date you've been on? And I sat there and I was like, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think this is the first date I've ever been on because my ex and I met in college, and in college, you're not really going on dates. You know what I mean? You meet up at parties. It's not like dating when you're older and dating in college are two completely different things, And so I was like, I got nothing for you. And it was a huge like shock because I was like, oh shit, like I'm about to get out here in like the dating world and I have zero dating experience. Yeah, that was a really interesting thing for me to navigate. Um, I ended up probably for the first 6 months after I was single, not really dating much at all. I was kind of just like focused working on myself. I got really big into working out. I think that was kind of the catalyst for me was focusing on my physical health and getting into the gym. I put on 30 pounds, got jacked, and just crushed it. And I think that was a huge catalyst for me kind of coming out of that situation was because I looked better than I ever had. I felt good. And I think when you get in the gym and you work on your physical appearance, you start to notice changes in yourself and you feel more confident. But then other people start to tell you, shit, dude, you look good. What have you been doing? Like, when you look good, you feel good. And then other people are telling you that you look good too. You're just like, I'm the man. Like,
That's what's true, man. That
so
revenge body is real.
everything just like feels like it starts coming to you, right? And like you got and so it was just a great feeling, and I just kind of rode that wave, and then I actually 6 months kind of like post the breakup moved to New York City, and I got a master class on dating.
100%. It's not only the city that never sleeps, but it's the city that that's always out, But going back, like revenge body is a real thing. I can't name one breakup that I or my friends have been through where our second, maybe third thought is, gotta hit the gym. I was like, yeah, gotta work out all this pain. But now I find there are two types of people who work out, who go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who just like to listen to like that hype pump rage music,
Mhm.
or there are just like people who like to do like podcasts or like something easy listening when they work out. What type of person are you?
I'm on my Eminem tip, man. Like I have like this is Eminem station on Spotify, and I just blast that. And if I'm trying to hit like a max or a PR or something like that, the song "Till I Collapse" by
Yeah,
Eminem. That
yeah.
song is a jam. Once I put that on, I instantly my bench press goes up like 30, 40 pounds automatically when I hear that song.
You're like, all right, it's go time, man. I'm not mad at it.
But how about you? What kind of music?
Honestly, it depends. Now, I don't need anybody to come at me for this, but right after a breakup in the gym, I have to listen, and just in general, I have to listen to the saddest shit ever. I'm not gonna. It's just something. Well, it actually depends because I can say this: I've been broken up with, and I've broken up with people.
Mm-hmm.
If I've been broken up with, doesn't matter. I will go back and throw on that freaking 2007 2008 Taylor Swift in the gym, ripping it out because I feel like I'm 15 again. Like I'll go back there. But if I broke up with somebody or just like it was just like a toxic situation that really wasn't that serious, I'm definitely like doing hardcore, heavy bass,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, it really just depends on the dynamic. Am I trying to get a revenge body, or am I just trying to like get back in a feel good space? It just
Mm-hmm.
depends on. That's a crazy much. It just depends on where I'm at. But speaking of music, this is the question I always have to ask people because I definitely have a breakup playlist. You
Mm-hmm.
guys know that. I might even drop it, like tag it along with this episode for anybody who's going through something right now because I feel you.
Mm-hmm.
Was there just like a song in this break, like during that time that really kind of like you listen to on repeat over and over again?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of. They're kind of like neck and neck for me. Is Bad Bunny and Drake, also
Okay.
on different ends of the spectrum, but
Okay.
both of them. The Un Verano Sin Ti album by Bad Bunny, which is kind of like a summer without me. And it was funny because that album came out in the last few months that I was with my ex, and we were both jammed to it. And I speak some Spanish, but not enough to really understand everything that he's saying. But I still vibe to
Right.
the music. But a lot of it is about being single for the summer.
Right.
And so, like, we're in a relationship, like, jamming to it. And then lo and behold, I ended up being single for the summer. So that ended up being like the theme album for me. But then Drake also came out with Her Loss. And so I was like, this my
Oh,
this is my jam too. Like
yeah.
I could get with this. So I would listen to those albums a lot, but specific songs I would say really liked and it was kind of a throwback, but like Soltera remix by Bad Bunny, and it's just about being single. And then another one was Search and Rescue by Drake. That's another banger. So I would listen to those two songs just every day on repeat, just feeling myself.
That actually was my introduction to Bad Bunny. So like I will always remember it that summer.
Hmm.
Maybe not the summer, but like I'll always remember that year because I was like, oh shit, like this slaps. I'm decent with my Spanish. I might have to listen to it 2 or 3 times, but
Hmm.
I get what you're saying. And I was like, he's just melodic. He's just his
Hmm.
melodies are always on point. But it is funny how that could be a song that's like cute and funny for you two, but then like a month later, totally different meaning. Nice for what was like one of those songs for me. It was like a nice song, but then like after I cut things off, I was like, what I got to be nice for you, like, it like really changed in my head. Like I said, relationships, they're tough, but
Hmm.
I feel like they really do teach you things. Like I said, adversity,
Hmm.
communication skills. You need those both in order to keep a healthy relationship and a healthy work environment,
Yeah.
especially in our space where we rely on consulting or getting in new clients. I can admit this. When I first started trying to get guests on the show or when I first started coaching, I was like, marketing wasn't my thing. I would take like 2 or 3 days to respond to any email, inquisition, anything.
Hmm.
And I learned real quick, it did work in my last relationship. Why the hell do I think it would work in my business? I was like, you got to be prompt. You got to follow up.
Hmm.
You got to ask questions. I know you said it kind of springboarded you to where you are today, but do you think there's a really big lesson that you've been able to take from that last relationship and apply to your work ethic?
Yeah, I think what I really learned was the importance of staying true to yourself and maintaining your sense of individualism and making sure that you're doing things that you enjoy and that you love to do. Because I think in any relationship, that person falls in love with you for who you are, and over time, the lines become blurred and your interests start to intermesh and to intermingle. And for me, I was kind of convinced that that sort of synergy in us having all the same interests and wanting to do all the same things and always being together was something that was super special and that everybody wished they had. But in reality, I'd kind of lost a lot of myself and I wasn't as happy or as fulfilled as I could be because I was partially living her dream and the dream that we were supposed to accomplish together instead of focusing on the things that really made me happy and made me the best version of myself. And so a lot of people may think, regardless of whether or not they just have a spouse or a family, that it's selfish for them to think and spend a lot of their time focused on themselves and what's most important to them. But the reality of it is, if you are always focused on other people and making them happy and not on yourself, you're not going to be content. You're not going to show up as the best version of yourself for those people. And when you take time to understand what's most important to you and what you value and finding fulfillment and contentment and happiness, then when you return back to your family and your friends, you show up as the best version of yourself for them. And you're that person that wants to be there and that they want to be around. And you show up with an energy that welcomes people and that makes people want to be around you, as opposed to it being obligatory and something that you feel like you have to do. And that may be subconscious, but a lot of times that's what ends up happening with people is they do lose that sense of like what drives you, like what most motivates you, what makes you happy. And they think that, well, if I just pour into all of these other things and make these other aspects of life great, then I'll be happy and things will be good. But they lose sight of, and I lost sight of what was really most important to me and like what my goals and aspirations were.
Identity is one of the most important things just in life. How we see ourselves, how other people see and perceive us. How do we want people to see and perceive us? Because those two things are different. And you're right. When you are because I'm going to use this on multiple fronts. Not
Hmm.
only when you're in a relationship, when you work somewhere for so long,
Hmm.
it really does become part of your identity. And when you're at a certain level, that entry level, especially, or middle management, you have to be careful because I feel like we all had parents or grandparents who came from an era where they worked one place for their entire life and then they
Hmm.
retired. But that's not really the case for the millennials and after.
Hmm.
Like retiring is probably not something we're going to do unless we all get like really successful and we just make buku bucks. Just being honest. One thing that I loved about this current era we're in right now is we're acting our wage. We are trying to be individuals within a workspace because that's really the last thing any company needs, more worker bees,
Hmm.
people just who put their head down and just keep chugging along without questioning things with no flair because it's too much of the same. It's
Hmm.
redundant. And it can be the same thing in a relationship when you lose yourself or you just become a yes person, you're not really doing yourself favors. You're not doing your partner any favors. Because I say this, even the greatest actor has to take a break. They can't be in a role forever. So when you stop playing this role, if you don't know who you are, if you're getting confused on the character that you were and the person that you are, it could be a murky situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize, like, hey, I'm in a position that I don't want to be in financially, physically, because you put your life on hold. And maybe you wanted to be somewhere warmer and her residency was somewhere colder, just, or in your hometown. Things like that. Identity plays a huge part because if you get so wrapped up in all that stuff and you stop doing things that you want to do, you're going to end up thinking like, crap, I'm behind. It's too late. And then you might start making rash moves. I lost myself. I was so committed to a company that did not give any cares about me. I was just another number. And the minute something went wrong in my actual life and I had to snap out and become Josh again, they didn't want to take the time to pause with me. They're like, sorry, we got to keep going. You can either hop back on the train or you can get off here.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw that, I was confused because I was like, I've literally given like a quarter of my life to this company.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't give me 2 months or a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, okay, if we are separating, what does that mean? And I tried to, like I said, my whole identity was this company,
Mm-hmm.
at least as far as the professional world. I didn't really have a lot of other experience.
Yeah.
We get so tunnel vision that, like I said, sometimes we screw ourselves out of opportunities and situations.
Without a doubt, man. I totally relate to what you're saying. I think, especially in the professional environment, again, all the growth, the most growth that I've gotten and ascertained through my professional career has been through adversity. I told you I went to work for that tech company right out of college. I grew up in Key West, so small town vibes. First person in my family to go to college, Most people that I graduated with don't make it off the island. If they do, they go to college and come right back and work for the family business or, do something that's the opportunities down there. There are opportunities to make money, but it's not the skills that you build there, unless you're in like real estate or like fishing or hospitality, aren't ones that are really relevant to the broader market. It's relevant to that town, but they're not translatable to, you want to leave Key West and go to Miami and you got 10 years worth of experience, you're kind of a decade behind everybody else, So it was always my goal to sort of get out. And I got out, lived in Fort Lauderdale. The company I was working for was in Fort Lauderdale. And 6 months into the role, my entire team got laid off. And I was like, oh shit, I was the only person that they kept. And they moved me over to another team in a different department. And then 6 months later, the entire department got laid off. And here I was like a year removed from college, took a risk to move out to Miami and work for a big corporation, was kind of like how my family saw it. And I was left like holding the bag, like laid off, didn't really know what to do. And, I ended up turning it around about 6 months later, taking a pay cut to get a different job to work in healthcare, which healthcare was kind of something that I was passionate about, always wanted to do. And it changed the course of my career because when I was going through that process, I was like, I'm never going to let this happen to me again. And when I go into the next role, I'm going to bust my ass because I remember being in that role and not knowing anything about corporate America or anything. It was obviously a failing department, but it was something where if I didn't have work given to me, like I was kind of sitting around, I wasn't actively like pursuing like different things to do. I was like, well, this is what my boss gave me to do. I'm going to do that. And when I'm done, like, I'll mess around here and do that. That mentality I lost real quick. And there's people that are 10 years into their career that still have that mentality. And so I learned at a very young age what happens when you don't add value. And that transformed the course of my entire career trajectory. I worked for 4 months in the next job that I was in and got promoted. Where I was a contractor. I got brought on full time to lead the team that I had just joined in 4 months. And I was put into a leadership position with 6 people beneath me with less than 2 years of experience. And that was something that was always like a dream of mine, was to lead a team of people, And there I was doing it within 2 years of my getting my first job, So that was something that, again, like adversity, like I just took it and ran with it. Was like, what can I learn from this? How can I be better? And propelled my career tenfold by that happening,
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to say, but I need you guys to really listen to me. I'm not going to say you can do this with relationships because it's a little toxic when you do, but at least in your career path, when you come into a place, don't be afraid to step on toes. Like you said, you were new. You went from being new to leading a team, and you got that way because you were hungry. You had a goal, and it was not to be on the bottom rung anymore, and you just went for it. That's what you have to do. Nobody's going to hand you anything in your professional life. You're going to have to take it. And if you are stuck on one level, you have to learn, okay, what's a skill I can take here? Or if you see an opening, what's a skill that can get me in that next door to then maybe take a step up, then to maybe do a horizontal shift over to where you want to be, because that's the game really. I've worked for, I think, what are we at, like 12 different companies now in my professional life. And it reminds me of like that OG Donkey Kong Mario 64 game where you like literally had to like hop up each rung because that's how you make it. Maybe you won't get a straight ladder. Sometimes you'll get a ladder. You got to scoot over a bit, hop over a couple barrels, go up to the next level, do the same thing over and over again. But then one day you look around and you're like, dude, I'm at the top. I'm impossible.
Without a doubt, man. And I kind of alluded to it earlier, but I think having that directionally accurate vision, right? If you think about it, like looking out, like you have this vision of where you want to go, and it's only directionally accurate. And when you first get started, it's blurry as shit, right? You can't see what's on the other end of it. You just kind of know, if I just keep putting one foot in front of the other, I'm headed in the right direction. Your goal should be every year that you work for that vision to become clearer and clearer. And if you're just working a job, cutting a paycheck, even if they're promoting you, but that vision of like what you're meant to do down the road is not getting any clearer, then you're wasting your time, you know? And I don't think that anybody, to be perfectly honest with you, should stay in any one role for more than 3 years. And I think 3 years is a very long time, especially early on in your career, because you cap out your learning around like a year to a year and a half. You're executing on behalf of that company, but you're not learning anything. Now you have to go challenge yourself outside of the company to get a certification or to pick up a new skill if you want to maximize your learning potential, right? And you will be infinitely more successful to move into a different role, whether it's within that company or at another company, because this first 6 months at a new job, even if you're doing the same thing or you have the same title, you're going to be learning so much and you have no choice, right? Like you don't give yourself like, oh, I'll come in and I'll fart around. It's like, no, this is a new job. I'm going to take it seriously. You can fart around with a certification for 3 or 4 years, but when you pick up a new job, if you have any type of work ethic, you're going to bust your ass for the first 6 months and you're going to learn a ton, you know? So for the people who do change jobs frequently, they're maximizing their learning potential. They're getting a lot out of it, you know? And I think that's a really difficult thing to challenge yourself to do in the same role at the same company.
I agree wholeheartedly. Anytime you're new in anything, you bust your ass for it. This transitions back to the whole business and not pleasure, but like business and personal realm is when you're in a new relationship, you're learning a crap ton about another person. You can be a quality partner because you want a quality partner. It's the same in business. You come in, you want to distinguish yourself so that you get a raise, so that you can get a promotion, or that you can get one step closer to your goal. And then 6 months to a year, you notice your management or maybe doesn't coach you as much. And that's with any job. They're like, well, you should be able to operate on your own. You love when companies trust you to be autonomous. Same way with your partner. Love that. Thank you. But you still want to keep learning marketable skills because like I wouldn't stay at any company for more than 2 or 3 years. If you're not really ready to settle down or you're just like dragging things out, it's the same in your relationship as well. Or sometimes you think the expectations just weren't what I imagined. And so it's okay, just like in your job, to be like, hey, I found a new opportunity. Might not be better. I think it is. So I'm going to go explore that. And then you start over. But each time you should be learning stuff. Better communication, raising emotional intelligence, setting boundaries. All these things go hand in hand. If you can't do it on a business level, you probably are not doing it in your personal life. If you're doing something in your personal life, it's probably something that's also transitioning to your professional life. So they're pretty one for one in that sense. So guys, it's really important to take lessons that Doug is telling you and apply them to all facets of your life.
And it's really funny that you say that, because like I think part of the reason why I've been able to grow a lot personally and in relationships is because of I'm very analytical in the way that my mind has worked, and that I've trained it to work in the business sense. Is I'm super analytical about things, and not necessarily in like a robotic, like kind of way. Like I have a lot of ethos as well, so whether it be like in the relationship that I was in or in dating, right? Like when I first got started dating, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But every single date that I went on, I would like come back from the date and like dissect it and be like, like, did this work? Like, would I take a girl there again? Like, what was good about it? What was bad about it? Like, how did I approach the situation? What types of things did we do? Like, were we like sitting across from one another? Were we sitting next to one another? What worked, like what helped, you know what I mean? And I took every single date that I went on when I started dating as an opportunity to learn and to get better at it. And and it's like, it's a skill. It's like anything else. Anything that you want to get better at or build up or excel at in life is a skill, and you need to practice it, and you need to practice it with intention. And so that was the approach that I took with dating. And I hear a lot of people talk about like, oh, dating sucks, and like dating this and dating that, and I can't stand it, and the apps and blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's your mindset. And if that's the mindset that you approach it with, you're going to have subpar results. And my mindset was, I will go out on 10 dates straight with women and spend 100 to 150 bucks like on the date. And I may never see them again, but I have a good time with all of them. I learned something out of it, and there's no love lost. Like, great. Like I would go back and I would do it again. You know what I mean? It didn't lead to anything, but that's perfectly fine. I love the process. I enjoy going out on dates. I enjoy learning about other people. I enjoy learning about myself, and I got pretty good at just like being able to go on a date, be comfortable, have a good time. And that was like a great skill for me to pick up, and one that I didn't have before, but I was very intentional in the way that I built that.
I think that's something that we all should normalize. I say this: dating is like Golden Corral. Get a little bit of everything. Like they won't cut you off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? As like I'm so serious. You think I might be jokes?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with going on, like you said, 10 straight dates with 10 different women.
Mm-hmm.
You could be 3 of the same types of women. They could be completely different. But each one, you're not the same person. You're learning new things about how to interact with people. What's more important, you're defining, what do I want? What do I not want?
Mm-hmm.
And like you were talking about, that picture, it's getting more and more vivid
Mm-hmm.
with the date.
Mm-hmm.
Or you never know, because this happened to me plenty of times. Some of the people I go on dates with, it doesn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
We did 1 or 2, you're like, hey, this is fun, but like it's really not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But now we're friends. Or I've even had people who I've been on dates with introduce me to like their company, and then I worked for those companies for a bit. You don't know where connections are going to lead. So
absolutely,
we just talked about this with Dr. Crystal, is not everything has to be forever. Okay. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just want to get into a conversation or go on a date just for some companionship. That's fine. It's the same with like jobs or any client or company that you're trying to work with. I don't go into jobs saying, hey, I'm going to retire here.
Mm-hmm.
I go into a job saying, hey, I want to make an impact. Hey, I want to learn something. And then if I stay there forever, cool. If I don't, the key is I learned something. If you go to a new job and you didn't learn anything because you were just too distracted or too focused,
mm-hmm.
you just did the same exact thing you did at the last job you left that you weren't happy at, then guys, you're not paying attention. I mean, you're not listening. Completely change what you are doing, and then you'll probably get new and better results.
Without a doubt, man. And it's something that you reminded me of that kind of came up in therapy through the whole process. Was kind of a recurring theme with me for a long time. Was I was very outcome driven. I was always tethered to like what is the outcome and what is the right thing, And I think that was part of like my business experience. Was I was very like results and outcome driven, and that all my goals were based on that. And so going into dating, I think when you're very outcome driven and you're like, the outcome that I need to achieve is to like have somebody that I'm in a relationship with and spend the rest of my life with. And when you put that kind of pressure on yourself, it robs you of the experience and living in the moment, And so I think that regardless of like whether or not you do sort of have like a timer, or you feel like I do need to get with somebody like soon, I think when you put that type of pressure on a situation, it doesn't serve you. I think you're best to remove like the outcome that you're looking for from your mind and just focus on how do I on this next date have the most fun as possible. The difference between dates going well and dates going poorly is were you having fun on them? 9 times out of 10, if the person agrees to go on a date with you, they think you're attractive enough to at least go out on a date with, right? They're trying to get to know you for you. And if you're there and you're having your best time and you're having a great time, like that person's going to feel your energy and they're going to like you. You know what I mean? So I think spend less time focused on like the outcome and where you're trying to get to and more time like, how do I just go out with another person and have a great time? What type of environment do I need to put myself in to go out and have a great time?
Guys, just live in the moment, okay? Because if you think about it, how was anything built? It was built brick by brick, piece by piece, and then it became something freestanding that lasted forever. You
Mhm.
know, Rome really wasn't built in a day, so those guys were not thinking, "Hey, next week we have to be on the next archway." They weren't thinking that. They're like, "Hey, we have this one thing. Let's focus on doing that, and then we'll move on to something else."
Mhm.
But before we get out of here, Doug, I want to give you the opportunity, and this is something I've really loved doing this year or this season. Is I feel like as a host, of course, it's my job to ask you each and every question I can. But also, I feel like people start to pigeonhole you.
Mhm.
So I want to give you the opportunity. Is there anything that you've really wanted to talk about that you haven't had the opportunity to talk about, whether it's on another podcast or just like a thought that's actually just been living rent free in your head? And you're like, I wish more people knew about this.
It's a great question. I think for me, alluded to it a little bit, but it's something that, especially as I become more successful and have more time and energy and money to be able to give away to different types of causes and stuff like that, something that I'm pretty passionate about is therapy and like access to mental health resources. Because for myself, I was always anti-therapy and was like, I got plenty of people around me, I can figure it out, like talking to my friends and my family, and I'll just get through it. It was almost like going to therapy was like an admission that there was something wrong. And once you did it, you were like, I'm depressed. And so like and I think there's that stigma. And also it can be, to find a good therapist can be very costly. It's something that's like, it's difficult to find an affordable therapy plan or therapist to go to. Also, you can get discouraged if the first person that you go to isn't somebody that you really vibe with. It's kind of like dating, to be honest. Like you kind of need to date around a little bit before you find somebody that you actually enjoy talking to. But for me, it was something that's been a really pivotal part in my growth and in my sort of trajectory and stability. Coming out of a hard situation, and I never would have tried it out had I not gone through that. It's funny because the way that it worked out was I had a couples therapy session scheduled, the first one with my ex. And on that same night was when all hell broke loose and we broke up. And the therapy session was coming up, and I was like sitting there with my best friend who came over like after everything had happened. And I was like, dude, should I join this thing? He's like, yeah, bro. Like I'll join it with you. I'll be your girlfriend. And so we joined on this like couples therapy call, and the therapist like and I hit it off. Like she talked me through kind of what had just occurred like 30 minutes ago, and she's still my therapist today. She took me on as like a solo client when she does mostly couples therapy, and it's been like one of the best things that I've done, not only to help me through difficult times, but I think it's almost more impactful when things are going great, because she's also somebody that's like one of my biggest cheerleaders and somebody that I look forward to going and like telling good news to. So I think just being an advocate for that and encouraging people, regardless of their situation, whether they're sad, happy, depressed, like it's really just good to have somebody like that you can talk to. And a lot of my sessions just end up being like whatever is going on in my head that I'm like stressed about. It's an opportunity for me to just kind of like talk those things out, and she kind of just like mediates me and my own thoughts. And as my thoughts start to drift into like self-doubt or stuff like that, like she's kind of like course correcting me and stuff like that. So a lot of the like healthy reflection that I do on a regular basis, like therapy's provided me the space to do that. And I think why it's important is if you don't have a therapist, you're doing that either with your friends or your family, or you're just bottling it all up inside. I think we all know why bottling it up inside is not a good idea. But I think when you use your friends and your family or your spouse as a therapist, now like they take on a piece of whatever it is that you're going through as well.
Yeah.
And I liken it to like if you had something terrible happen to you, right? And you got on the phone with your grandma to tell her how you were doing. You probably wouldn't be like, "Grandma, like this horrible thing is happening to me right now," because like you wouldn't want to worry her. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like you would want to wait until you got through it, and then maybe you would tell her like, "Hey, this happened, but like everything's all good." You know what I mean? And so imagine everybody is your grandma. Like they may not they may not, be that same, they may not be as hot and cold as your grandma would be in responding to the situation, but they carry a piece of the burden that you impart on them as well. And I think that where you can use like somebody who's kind of unbiased and like that to kind of get through the difficult times and then just show up as your best self for the people that love you and care about you, it's a really empowering and like powerful thing, and it improves a lot of your relationships. I've noticed like how it's helped me in that way. And it's not to say that you can't talk about like difficult things with your friends and family, but they shouldn't be your sole source of it, especially if you're going through a difficult time. So I think that's something that I always would like to try and give a plug for, and I'm a huge advocate of.
I mean, that's amazing. And I've said it again. Let's normalize going to therapy. If you are above the age of 15, I think you should hit therapy up at least once.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that it needs to be something you do for your entire life. Therapy is not designed forever. It's designed for cycles. And there you can go for, like Doug was saying, all types of reasons. But it is good to have somebody who is impartial and they can just be a blank canvas for you to paint on.
Mhm.
Because sometimes, like you said, it looks messy, it's chaotic right now, but then you get it all out, you take a step back, and you've created something amazing, and you feel better, and you end up in a more enlightened space. I'm right beside you and giving a big shout out for therapy. Guys, if you've been in therapy, you guys, if you've been in therapy before, I want you to go ahead and leave a comment. You don't have to tell me if you have or haven't, but like, just like leave a like, and then I'll know, like, hey, there are some emotionally balanced kings out there or queens, whatever. Because listen, I'm a little apprehensive to date anybody or go into business with anybody who's not been to therapy before. Because the only time I want you to bottle it up is if I'm at the bar and I need something to go, or you're one of my favorite artists. Because I need you to go through some struggle because your shit just sounds better. I'm sorry. All the breakups, like keep breaking up with these artists, okay? Be as toxic as you want because you're giving me some quality stuff. My playlist is never dry because of it. Doug, thank you so much for making time for us today. And before we get
Yeah.
out of here, let everybody know where they can follow you because I already know they're scrolling through the comments down there looking for the link to connect with you.
Yeah, so if you want to just kind of follow me, like know more about me, you can follow me on Instagram at Doug Plowman. Most of my business ventures are going to be accessible, and you can find more about those through LinkedIn. My LinkedIn profile is also Doug Plowman, so you can search me on there. Started my business in March, so I'm in the process right now, actively taking on new clients. If you're in the need for some type of technology solution for your business, regardless of what it is, CRM, ERP, I'm your guy. I'll help you find the best solution for your unique business need, and then also stay with you through implementation and make sure that you get what you paid for as well. So if anybody's interested, follow me, shoot me a message. Happy to help out in any way I can.
Alrighty, guys, thank you so much for making it through another episode of the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad. I can't wait to see all you amazing people next week for another episode.